For my graduation, my parents gifted me a disownment letter. From all of us, Mom announced that the restaurant, my sister recorded my reaction for their entertainment. I thanked them, took the papers, and walked out. They had no idea what I'd already done. The restaurant was one of those overpriced places where the servers wore black and spoke in hushed tones. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and every table had fresh orchids as centerpieces. My mother, Claudia, had insisted on making reservations at Romano's 3 months in advance. She told me it was to celebrate my graduation from law school, top of my class at Stanford. The whole family would be there, she'd said. I should have known better. When I arrived, they were already seated. My father, Raymond, sat at the head of the table in his navy suit, the same one he wore to board meetings. My sister Miranda was next to my mother, her phone already in her hand. She didn't even look up when I approached. My brother-in-law Quentin gave me an uncomfortable nod. He'd always been the only decent one among them, but he'd long since learned to keep his mouth shut. There she is, Claudia announced, her voice carrying that artificial sweetness that meant trouble. Our graduate. I sat down, smoothing my dress. I'd worn something simple but elegant, navy blue with a modest neckline. My graduation ceremony had been 3 days earlier. None of them had attended. Claudia had claimed she had a charity luncheon. Raymond had a golf tournament. Miranda was getting her nails done. Dinner started normally enough. Raymond ordered an expensive bottle of wine without consulting anyone. Claudia talked about her upcoming trip to the Hamptons. Miranda complained about her interior designer not understanding her vision for the poolside cabana. I pushed pasta around my plate and waited. Dessert arrived. Asterisk tiramisu for the table. Miranda's phone came up, angled directly at me. The little red recording light glowed in the dim restaurant lighting. So, sweetheart, Claudia began, reaching into her designer handbag. Your father and I have been discussing your future. She pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on the table between us. The paper was crisp, formal, legal. We've decided it's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. Raymond added, his voice carrying that patronizing tone he used when explaining why he wouldn't fund one of my mother's shopping trips. You're a lawyer now? You don't need us anymore. My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept my face neutral. Years of family dinners had taught me how to hide my reactions. We've had our attorneys draw up the paperwork, Claudia continued, sliding the envelope closer. This formally severs all financial and legal ties between us. You're no longer a beneficiary of any trusts, wills, or family assets. It's for your own good, Raymond said, taking a sip of his wine. You'll thank us later. Miranda's phone remained steady, capturing every second. Her lips curved into a smile she didn't bother hiding. I opened the envelope. Inside were official documents notarized and signed. A disownment letter as formal as they come. Language about removal from the will. Cessation of all financial support. Termination of access to family accounts. They'd been thorough. From all of us, Claudia announced, gesturing around the table. Her diamonds caught the light. The same diamonds my grandfather had given my grandmother before Claudia had the stones reset into something more modern. I read through the papers slowly, let the silence stretch. Miranda kept recording, probably hoping I'd cry, beg, make a scene they could laugh about later at their country club. Instead, I folded the papers neatly and placed them back in the envelope. Then I looked up and smiled. Thank you, I said simply. Asterisk Claudia blinked. What? I said, thank you. This is very generous of you. I stood up, gathering my purse. I appreciate you going to all this trouble. The lawyer's fees must have been substantial. Raymond's face darkened. You're not going to make a scene? Why would I? You've just given me the most valuable gift I could ask for. I tucked the envelope under my arm. Freedom from all of you. Miranda lowered her phone slightly, confused. I walked out of Romano's without looking back. Behind me, I could hear Claudia's indignant voice rising. Let them think they'd won. Let them think they'd broken me. They had no idea what I'd already done. 3 years earlier. During my first year of law school, I'd gone home for Thanksgiving. Miranda had just announced her engagement to Quentin, whose family owned a successful tech company in Austin. Claudia had been over the moon. Finally, a child who was marrying well. Who would give her grandchildren she could show off at the club? Who understood the importance of appearances? I'd overheard them in the study after dinner. Claudia, Raymond, and my uncle Preston, who'd flown in from Chicago. They were discussing family assets, trust funds, inheritance structures. I'd stood outside the door holding a glass of water I'd gone to fetch. Listening. When Miranda marries the Ross boy, she'll be taken care of, Raymond had said. But that one, he'd meant me, all she does is study. No prospects, No social connections worth mentioning. She's awkward. Claudia had agreed. Did you see her at the Johnsons' gala? She spent the whole evening talking to their accountant about tax law. Tax law at a party. We should cut our losses, Preston had suggested. Why throw good money after bad? She never marry well. She'll probably end up some public defender making $30,000 a year. Let's wait until she graduates, Raymond had decided. We'll see if she at least passes the bar. If she does, we'll cut her loose. If she doesn't, we'll reconsider. No point in supporting someone who can't even manage that much. They'd laughed. All three of them. Like I was a failed investment. A stock that hadn't performed. I'd walked back upstairs without making a sound. The water glass had shaken in my hand, but my mind was already working. Already planning. The next day, I'd driven back to school early, told them I had studying to do. I'd gone straight to my faculty advisor, Professor Sarah Jennings, one of the most respected attorneys in corporate law. She'd mentored me since my first semester, seen something in me that my family never had. I need your help, I told her. I need to understand family trusts, estate planning, and corporate structure. Everything, not just the basics we cover in class. I need to know how to protect assets, how to build wealth independently, how to make sure no one can ever control me financially. Professor Jennings had studied my face for a long moment. This is personal. Vera, come to my office Monday at 7. We'll start then. For the next 3 years, Professor Jennings had given me an education within an education. She'd introduced me to contacts in estate planning, corporate law, investment banking. I'd learned everything about wealth management, asset protection, and financial independence. I'd worked internships that had nothing to do with my eventual career plans, and everything to do with understanding how money really worked. During my second year, I'd started consulting on the side. Small cases at first, businesses that needed contract reviews, startups that needed legal structures. I charged reasonable rates and built a reputation for being thorough, fast, and discreet. Word spread in the tech community, especially in Silicon Valley. By my third year, I had enough saved to invest. I'd found a startup called DataStream, 3 Stanford dropouts with a revolutionary approach to cybersecurity. Their technology was brilliant, but their business structure was a disaster. I'd offered to fix their corporate legal framework in exchange for equity, 2% of the company. They'd agreed. The company went from 3 people in a garage to 50 employees in 6 months. By the time I graduated, DataStream had just been acquired by a major tech corporation for $800 million. My 2% stake was worth $16 million. I'd kept it quiet. Didn't tell anyone, not even Quentin, who would have understood. The money sat in investment accounts, diversified and protected by legal structures I'd built myself. My family had no idea. They thought I was just studying, just being the boring, awkward little daughter who couldn't catch a husband. The week before graduation, I had my own attorney draw up papers, formal renunciation of any future claims to family assets, a preemptive strike that would protect me if they ever tried to come back later, claiming I owed them something, that my success was somehow built on their foundation. I'd been planning to present it to them myself, along with a few choice words about what they could do with their money, but they'd beaten me to it, and in doing so, they'd made it so much sweeter. I drove to my apartment in Palo Alto, a small 1-bedroom I'd been renting for the past year. Everything I owned fit into my car. I'd been prepared for this moment, even if I hadn't known exactly when it would come. The apartment felt different when I walked in, lighter somehow, despite the boxes I needed to pack. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the Stanford campus lights flicker in the distance. This place had been my sanctuary for 12 months, but it was time to move on. Time to step into the life I'd been building in secret. I thought about the day I'd signed the DataStream paperwork. The founders had been skeptical at first when a law student offered to overhaul their corporate structure for equity instead of cash. They'd had lawyers before, expensive ones from big firms who charged them hourly rates they could barely afford and delivered cookie-cutter documents that didn't account for their specific technology or growth trajectory. I'd spent 3 weeks analyzing every aspect of their business: intellectual property protection, founder vesting schedules, investment terms that would protect them from predatory venture capitalists, employee stock option plans that would attract top talent. I built them a legal framework that could scale from 3 people to 300 without needing to be completely restructured. When I presented my work, their lead developer, Marcus Chen, had stared at the documents for 10 minutes without speaking. Finally, he'd looked up and said, "This is better than anything we've gotten from firms charging us $20,000. Why are you doing this for equity?" Because I believe in what you're building, I told him, and because someday that equity will be worth more than any hourly rate. You're either crazy or brilliant, Marcus had said. Maybe both. They'd given me the equity. 2% had seemed small at the time, but I'd watched DataStream grow over the next 2 years, tracking every funding round, every product launch, every expansion into new markets. I continued advising them unofficially, answering questions over coffee, connecting them with potential clients and partners. They valued my input enough to increase my stake to 3% without me asking. Finalizing the paperwork 6 months before any acquisition talks began. When the acquisition talks started, Marcus had called me personally. We're in discussions with the offer is substantial, but we're not signing anything until you review the terms. I'd spent a week negotiating on their behalf, making sure the founders got the payout they deserved and that their employees were taken care of. The final acquisition price had been higher than the initial offer by almost $100 million, my 3% stake. Translated to $24 million before taxes. After capital gains and state taxes, I walked away with just over $18 million. $18 million that my family knew nothing about. I'd been careful. The money had been distributed through a legal entity I'd set up specifically for investment purposes. A Delaware LLC that provided privacy and protection. Even if my parents had hired investigators, which I doubted they'd thought to do, they wouldn't have found anything connecting me to DataStream. I'd listed Professor Jennings as the registered agent, and all official communications went through a P.O. box. The wine glass was empty. I poured another and opened my laptop. Email after email from classmates congratulating me on graduation, asking about my plans, suggesting we stay in touch. I responded to each one thoughtfully. These people were my real network, built on mutual respect and shared experiences rather than obligatory family connections. There was also an email from my law school roommate Tessa Morgan, who'd moved to New York for a position at a white shoe firm. Drinks when you're in town, she'd written. I want to hear all about how you're destroying it in the real world. Tessa had been one of the few people I'd confided in about my family situation. Not everything, but enough. She'd seen me working late into the night on my consulting projects while other students were at bars or networking events. She'd asked once why I pushed myself so hard. Because I can't afford not to, I told her. Your family has money though, right? I've seen your mom's Instagram. She's always at charity galas. That's their money, not mine, and it never will be. Tessa had nodded slowly, understanding something I hadn't explicitly said. Asterisk, she'd never brought it up again, but she'd started introducing me to people who could help my career professors, alumni, lawyers in private practice who were looking for smart associates. She'd had my back without making a big deal about it. I made a mental note to take her up on that drink offer. Maybe bring her a nice bottle of wine as a thank you for 3 years of quiet support. My phone rang as I was packing. Miranda, you think you're so smart, she hissed when I answered. Walking out like that, you just proved everything they said about you. You're ungrateful. Entitled. You think you can make it on your own. You have no idea how the real world works. You're probably right, I said mildly, folding a sweater. I guess we'll see. You'll come crawling back within 6 months. You'll see how hard it is without daddy's money. Without the family name, you're nobody. Without us, Miranda, I'm hanging up now. Good luck with the cabana. I disconnected and blocked her number. Then my mother's, then my father's. Clean break. I'd already accepted a position at Morrison & Associates, a prestigious firm in San Francisco. My starting salary was $200,000 a year, which would have been plenty to live on, but I had other plans. The next morning, I met with a real estate agent. By afternoon, I'd made an offer on a penthouse in Pacific Heights. Cash offer, no contingencies. Asterisk, 3 bedrooms, views of the bay, parking for 2 cars. The seller accepted immediately. I bought furniture, not the antique, overdone pieces my mother favored, but modern, comfortable things that I actually liked. I hired a decorator who understood minimalism, clean lines, open spaces, windows that let in light. 2 weeks after the dinner at Romano's, I got an email from Miranda. The subject line read, "Hope you're enjoying your independence." Inside was a group photo from a family gathering I hadn't been invited to. Claudia, Raymond, Miranda, Quentin, Uncle Preston, Aunt Sylvia, and about 20 other relatives at the country club. Everyone was smiling, champagne glasses raised. The message below read, "Don't worry, we're not missing you. Family celebration without the dead weight." XOI deleted it without responding, but I did make one call. Professor Jennings, it's me. I'm ready to start the firm. We'd talked about it during my last year of school, a boutique law firm specializing in tech startups and emerging companies. Professor Jennings would be the senior partner, bringing her decades of experience and reputation. I'd be the junior partner, bringing energy, connections in the startup world, and a substantial amount of capital to get us off the ground. The conversation lasted 3 hours. We discussed office space, hiring strategy, the types of clients we wanted to attract. Professor Jennings had been planning her exit from academia for years, waiting for the right opportunity. This was it. I'll need to finish out the semester, she said. Give the school proper notice. But by August, I'm yours. August is perfect. That gives me time to handle the logistics. You're sure about the capital investment? Starting a firm isn't cheap, especially in San Francisco. I'm sure. I have access to funds that will cover us for at least the first 2 years, even if we don't land a single client. She was quiet for a moment. Vivian, I've known you for 3 years now. You've never once mentioned having that kind of money. I earned it, and I've been very careful about who knows. I paused. My family thinks I'm just another struggling associate. I'd like to keep it that way. Your secret is safe with me, though I suspect that secret won't last long once we open the doors and people see what you're capable of. The firm became my obsession over the next few months. I found office space in the financial district, a corner unit on the 20th floor with views of the Bay Bridge. The lease was expensive, but location mattered in this business. Clients needed to feel like they were working with serious professionals, not kids playing lawyer in a basement office. I hired an interior designer who understood what I wanted, professional, but not stuffy, modern, without being trendy. The kind of space where a 25-year-old tech founder in a hoodie would feel just as comfortable as a 50-year-old executive in a 3-piece suit. We bought furniture that would last, built custom bookshelves for law references, installed a conference room with video capabilities and a screen that could display presentations. My office was modest, smaller than Professor Jennings's corner office, but it had everything I needed. A desk with enough surface area to spread out documents, comfortable chairs for client meetings, a credenza where I kept files on current cases. The hiring process was intensive. We needed associates who were brilliant but not arrogant, hardworking but not burnouts, people who understood that we were building something different from the traditional big law model. We interviewed dozens of candidates before finding two who fit. Grace Feldman, a recent graduate from Berkeley with a gift for contract negotiation, and James Park, who'd spent 3 years at a corporate firm before deciding he wanted to work with startups instead of conglomerates. Then there was the marketing. Asterisk. We couldn't just hang a sign and hope clients appeared. I reached out to every contact I'd made during my consulting years. Marcus Chen from DataStream became an unofficial ambassador, recommending us to other founders in his network. Professor Jennings tapped our academic connections, bringing in established companies that needed specialized expertise. We wrote articles for legal journals, positioning ourselves as thought leaders in tech law. The website took weeks to perfect. Clean design, case studies that showed our expertise without violating client confidentiality, bios that highlighted our credentials without sounding pompous. We wanted to project competence and accessibility in equal measure. Jennings Legal Partners opened on a Tuesday in November, exactly 6 months after that dinner at We had champagne in the conference room at 5 o'clock. Just the 4 of us. No big party, no press release. We toasted to the future and got back to work. The first month was slow. We'd expected that. Building a reputation takes time, especially when you're competing against established firms with decades of history. But we had patience and enough capital to weather the quiet period. Our first major client came in September, a biotech startup that needed help navigating FDA regulations and patent law. It was exactly the kind of complex, interesting work we wanted. Grace took the lead on the patent applications while I handled the corporate structure. The case took 4 months and resulted in a successful product launch and a very satisfied client who referred 3 other companies to us. By December, we had a steady stream of work. Word was spreading that Jennings Legal Partners delivered results without the bloated bills and bureaucratic nightmares of bigger firms. We were responsive, creative, and actually cared about our clients' success beyond the billable hours. I worked 12-hour days and loved every minute of it. This was mine in a way nothing had ever been before. Not handed to me, not expected, not obligatory. Built from scratch through intelligence, hard work, and strategic planning. We kept the firm small and selective. Only took clients we believed in, companies that were doing something innovative. Our reputation grew fast. By the end of the first year, we had a waiting list. I never posted about it on social media. Never sent announcements. Let my family think I was struggling at some big firm working 100-hour weeks for partners who didn't know my name. 18 months after the dinner at I was having coffee with a potential client in the financial district when I heard familiar voices. I looked up to see my parents walking into the same cafe, deep in conversation with a man in an expensive suit. Claudia saw me first. Her mouth opened slightly, then pressed into a thin line. Raymond followed her gaze, his expression cooling. They couldn't exactly avoid me. The cafe was small, and I was sitting near the entrance. "Hello, mother, father." "Vivian," Claudia said stiffly. "What are you doing here?" "Meeting a client." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "He's running late." "I see you're still." Raymond trailed off, looking me over. My suit was designer, subtle but expensive. My watch was a Cartier. I bought myself the day the firm turned its first profit. "Working?" "Yes, it's going well." I didn't elaborate. "Are you still with that big firm?" Claudia asked. "Morrison something." "No, actually, I left about a year ago." Their faces shifted. A flash of satisfaction. Here it was. They were thinking. The moment she admits she failed. The moment she asks for help. "I started my own practice." I continued smoothly. "It's been quite successful." "Your own practice?" Raymond's tone was skeptical. "That takes capital. Connections. Experience." "Yes, it does." I smiled. Fortunately, I had all three. My client walked in then, saving me from further conversation. Blake Morrison, CEO of Tech Forward, a company valued at $3 billion. He was young, brilliant, and intensely loyal to the few people he trusted. I'd handled his company's legal structure since the beginning. "Vivian." He crossed the cafe in quick strides, hand extended. "Sorry I'm late. Board meeting ran over." I stood, shaking his hand. "No problem, Blake. Let's grab that corner table." As we walked past my parents, I saw their faces. Recognition dawning. Blake Morrison was regularly featured in Forbes and Tech. Everyone in the Bay Area business community knew who he was. I didn't look back. Over the next year, the firm grew. We took on bigger clients, more complex cases. Professor Jennings and I made a perfect team. She handled the courtroom drama when it was needed. I handled the negotiations, the contracts, the intricate legal structures that protected our clients' innovations. I bought a second property in Napa Valley, a vineyard estate I'd fallen in love with during a weekend trip. It became my retreat, the place I went when the city felt too crowded. And then, 2.5 years after the dinner at Romano's, I got a phone call from Quentin. "Vivian, it's me. Please don't hang up." I almost did, but something in his voice stopped me. "What do you want?" "I need to talk to you in person. It's important." "Quentin, I have no interest in. It's about your family. Please, just give me an hour." We met at a neutral location, a restaurant in Oakland. Quentin looked tired, older than his 32 years. The easy smile he'd always worn was gone. "Miranda and I are getting divorced," he said without preamble. "It'll be final in 3 months. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. He shook his head. "Don't be. I should have done it years ago." He took a breath. "Your family is in trouble, Vivian. Financial trouble." I set down my water glass. "What kind of trouble?" "Your father made some bad investments about 2 years ago, right around the time you left. He put a huge amount of capital into a real estate development deal that fell through. Then he tried to recoup the losses in the stock market. Bad timing. Worse choices." "How bad?" "They're going to lose the house. The club membership is already gone. Your mother sold most of her jewelry last month. They're trying to keep up appearances, but people are starting to notice." I processed this. "Why are you telling me?" "Because Miranda has been talking about reaching out to you. She thinks you'll help." "Your mother, too?" "They've been asking me questions about what you might be worth, if you're still at Morrison, if I know where you live." "And you told them?" "I told them I don't have contact with you," which was true until today. He leaned forward. "Vivian, they're going to come to you, and they're going to act like the last 2.5 years never happened. Like they didn't disown you in a restaurant while Miranda filmed it for entertainment. They're going to expect you to fix this." "What do you think I should do?" "That's not my call to make. I just thought you deserved a warning." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you were always the best of them. The only one who actually earned anything. I'm sorry I never said that when it mattered." He left me sitting there, thinking. The call came 2 weeks later. Claudia, her voice bright and artificial. "Darling, it's been far too long. We simply must get together for lunch. I have so much to catch up on. I'm very busy. Mother. Oh, of course you are, but surely you can spare an hour for your mother. We could meet at that lovely cafe you liked, the one where we ran into you. When was that? A year ago. Asterisk, you looked so well. What do you want, Claudia? Silence. She hated when I used her first name. I want to see my daughter. Is that so wrong? You disowned me. You had lawyers draw up papers removing me from the family. You made it very clear I was a disappointment, a burden, dead weight. According to Miranda's email, what exactly has changed, Claudia? That was, we thought we were doing what was best for you, teaching you independence. By disowning me at my graduation dinner while Miranda recorded it. Your sister was just, she didn't mean anything by that. What do you actually want, Mother? Another pause. When she spoke again, the artificial brightness was gone. We need to talk about family finances. Your father and I have had some setbacks, and we thought perhaps you might be able to help. As a lawyer, you must understand investments, financial structures. We could use your expertise. My expertise. Yes, and perhaps some temporary assistance while we restructure some things. We're family, Vivian. Family helps each other. I let the silence stretch. I'll think about it, I said finally. I'll call you back. I didn't call back. Instead, I had my assistant draft the letter, formal, legal, cold. It reminded them that they had legally severed all ties with me 2.5 years prior, that I had no obligation, legal or moral, to provide assistance of any kind, that any future contact should go through my attorney. I enclosed a copy of their own disownment papers, the ones they presented to me at the bottom. I included one personal line in my own handwriting. You taught me to stand on my own 2 feet. Thank you for that lesson. I had it delivered by courier to their home, the home they were about to lose. Miranda called next, 3 days later. No pretense this time. You selfish, after everything we gave you. We raised you, paid for your education, you paid for undergraduate. I took out loans for law school. Check your records. We gave you a home, opportunities, you gave me contempt, conditional approval, and a public disownment, complete with video footage. Did you save that video, by the way? I hope so. It would make excellent evidence if you try to claim otherwise. You're really going to just stand by while your family loses everything? I'm going to do exactly what you taught me to do. Stand on my own 2 feet. Take care of myself. Not be dead weight. I kept my voice level. Professional. You made it very clear that I was nobody without the family name. This is me proving you wrong. You can't do this. I already did. Goodbye, Miranda. I blocked her number too. The next few weeks brought a barrage of attempts. Emails from family, friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly interested in reconnecting. Each message was transparent in its purpose. They'd heard the family was struggling. They'd heard I was doing well. Wouldn't it be nice to help out? Family is family. After all, I deleted every single one without responding. Then came the lawyers. My parents actually hired attorneys to explore whether they could contest the disownment papers on the grounds that they'd been emotionally compromised when signing them. The same papers they'd presented to me in a public restaurant as a calculated humiliation. The irony wasn't lost on me. My attorney, David Chen, handled it with barely concealed amusement. They're claiming they were under emotional distress when they legally disowned you. The paperwork is notarized, dated, and there's apparently video evidence of them presenting it to you as a deliberate act. My sister filmed it. She thought it was funny. Well, that video is now evidence that this was premeditated and executed with full awareness of the consequences. Their lawyers are going to drop this claim within a week once they realize how badly it could backfire. He was right. The legal challenge disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. I imagine their attorneys explained that pursuing this in court would only create a public record of their actions, something they desperately wanted to avoid. But Claudia wasn't done trying. She started showing up at places she thought I might be. The coffee shop near my office became off limits after I spotted her there 3 days in a row, sitting alone at a corner table, clearly hoping I'd walk in. She tried the gym where I had a membership, the grocery store I preferred. It was harassment disguised as maternal concern, and it was pathetic. I changed my routine, started working out at a different gym, ordered groceries for delivery, varied my coffee shops. It was annoying, but I refused to let her control my life through stalking behavior. The breaking point came when she tried to approach me at a professional event. I was at a tech conference, networking with potential clients when I felt a hand on my arm. Claudia, dressed in what was probably the most expensive outfit she still owned, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Vivian, sweetheart, what a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence. The event had been publicized and my name was listed as a panelist. She bought a ticket specifically to ambush me. This isn't appropriate, I said quietly, removing her hand from my arm. I'm your mother. When is it not appropriate for a mother to speak to her daughter? When that mother legally disowned said daughter and is now harassing her at professional events. People were starting to notice. Claudia's smile became strained. You're making a scene. No, you're making a scene, and if you don't leave immediately, I'll have security escort you out. You wouldn't dare. I pulled out my phone and texted David Chen. Send a cease and desist letter to Claudia. Include the coffee shop incidents, the gym, the grocery store, and today's conference. If she makes contact again, we file for a restraining order. Then I turned to the nearest security guard and explained the situation. He was professional, courteous, and absolutely firm in escorting Claudia from the building. She protested, claiming family emergency and misunderstanding. But the guard had heard enough of our conversation to know better. As she was being led away, she turned back to me. Your father is sick, Vivian. He's having heart problems from the stress. Do you really want that on your conscience? I felt a flicker of something, not guilt exactly. Maybe just the ghost of old obligations. Old patterns of thinking that said family meant something, regardless of how they treated you. But then I remembered the study, the laughter. Why throw good money after bad? He should probably reduce his stress levels then, I said evenly. I hear bankruptcy proceedings are actually quite straightforward these days. The guard led her away. Several people who'd witnessed the exchange gave me sympathetic looks. One venture capitalist I'd been hoping to connect with approached me after Claudia was gone. Family troubles? She asked. Former family. They legally disowned me. Now they want back in because I turned out successful. She laughed. I had an uncle try something similar. Kicked me out of the house at 18. Told me I'd never amount to anything. Tried to borrow money from me 10 years later. Some people only value you for what you can give them. Exactly. I like you, she said. Let's grab coffee next week. I have a portfolio company that needs legal work. That conversation alone made the awkwardness of Claudia's ambush worthwhile. The cease and desist letter went out the next day, and the harassment finally stopped. Raymond tried a different approach. He sent a physical letter to my office, bypassing email and phone calls he knew I'd blocked. The envelope was thick, expensive stationery that I recognized from his desk at home. Inside was a handwritten letter, 3 pages long. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. The letter started with an apology of sorts. He acknowledged that the disownment had been handled poorly and that perhaps emotions ran higher than they should have. Not exactly taking full responsibility, but closer than I'd expected. Then came the justification. He explained the financial troubles in detail. The real estate deal that had seemed like a sure thing, backed by people he'd trusted for decades. The market crash that had wiped out half his portfolio. The desperation that had led to increasingly risky investments trying to recoup losses. He laid it all out like a case study in how not to manage wealth. The final page was the ask. He needed $750,000 to save the house and stabilize their finances. He'd pay me back, of course, with interest. He just needed time to restructure, to get back on his feet. Family helped family in times of crisis. Surely I understood that. $750,000. A specific number, carefully calculated enough to solve his immediate problems, but not so large that it seemed unreasonable to someone he believed was just a successful lawyer. He had no idea that amount was barely 3% of my liquid assets. I read the letter twice, then fed it through the office shredder. Watching the pages turn into thin strips of paper felt therapeutic. My response was briefer. One sentence handwritten on my firm's letterhead. Delivered by courier. You taught me that family is a privilege, not a guarantee. You revoked that privilege. The lesson was learned. He showed up at my office building, made it past security by claiming to be a client. My assistant buzzed me, uncertain. There's a Raymond here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's urgent family business. Tell him I'm unavailable. If he doesn't leave, call security. Through my office window, I watched him get escorted out. He looked smaller than I remembered, older. His suit was nice, but not new. The confidence that had always surrounded him like armor was gone. I felt a twinge of something. Not quite sympathy, maybe just recognition that this man, who had seemed so powerful my entire childhood, was human after all, fallible, capable of making catastrophic mistakes. But I didn't go down to talk to him. The final attempt came from Uncle Preston, who I hadn't blocked because I'd never given him my new number. He managed to get it somehow, probably from Claudia's old records. Vivian, it's your uncle. I'm calling because your parents are too proud to admit how serious this is. Your father is facing bankruptcy. Your mother is having health issues from the stress. I know there was some unpleasantness a few years ago, but surely you can put that aside when your family needs you. I returned his call from a blocked number. Uncle Preston, I appreciate you reaching out, but I need to correct something. Asterisk, they're not my family. They made that very clear, very legally, and very publicly. They're strangers who happen to share my DNA. You don't mean that. I absolutely do. You were there at that Thanksgiving, remember? In the study with my parents, discussing what a waste I was, how I'd never amount to anything, how I'd probably end up some public defender making pennies. You laughed about it. Silence. You heard that. Every word. That's when I decided that if I was going to be nothing to you, I'd be nothing on my own terms. Vivian, if you could just, I could, but I won't. Have a nice life, Uncle Preston. The calls and attempts continued sporadically over the next several months, each one more desperate than the last, but my resolve never wavered. 3 years after that dinner at Romano's, the harassment finally subsided completely. I heard through professional circles that my parents sold the house. They're in a condo now, somewhere in the suburbs. Claudia's charity boards have quietly dropped her from their rosters. Raymond's name is no longer mentioned in business circles. Miranda's divorce was finalized. She got the house and the settlement, but not much else. Quentin's family made sure of that. I don't feel triumphant. I don't feel vengeful. Mostly, I feel free. Last week, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line. I almost deleted it as spam. Vivian, this is Quentin. New email address. I wanted you to know that I'm starting a new company and could use legal counsel. If you're interested, no pressure. I also wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for all the times I stood by and said nothing for being complicit in how they treated you. You deserved better. You deserved someone in that family standing up for you. I should have been that person. I understand if you want nothing to do with any of us, but if you're willing to give me a chance, I'd like to try to be the brother-in-law you should have had from the start. I read it 3 times. Then I had my assistant schedule a consultation. People think revenge is about destruction, about burning everything down and dancing in the ashes. But the truest revenge is building something so beautiful, so successful, so completely yours that the people who tried to destroy you become irrelevant. They become cautionary tales you occasionally remember when you're sitting in your Napa Valley vineyard, watching the sunset over the hills you own. My name is Vivian. 3 years ago, my parents gifted me a disownment letter at my graduation dinner while my sister filmed my reaction for entertainment. I thanked them, took the papers, and walked out. They had no idea that I'd already built an empire they couldn't touch. That their rejection had freed me to become someone they never imagined I could be. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's becoming someone they can't hurt anymore. It's building a life so full, so successful, so genuinely happy that their absence becomes a blessing rather than a wound. I never needed their money, their name, or their approval. I just needed them to get out of my way. And that's exactly what they did.